Friday, Maize and Blue reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football. We're ready to kick this one off, talking about the latest with what's going on with the Wolverines. And as always, there's no shortage of things to talk about. Great to be with you on this February the 7th. And we've got some recruiting to get into. We know that Michigan just did a very good job of putting the finishing touches on the 2025 class. But now that 25 has been put to bed, it's time to jump in full on into 26. I've got some targets that I'm looking at. Let's see if Michigan ends up hitting the bullseye. The way they operated and maneuvered in 25, I don't put anything past them. Do you? Big basketball game in Bloomington. Tomorrow, a matinee at Assembly Hall. We'll see and discuss what's going on with Dusty and his guys ahead of that game with the Crimson and Cream with their head coach. No coincidence this week, the news coming out that he's not going to be the head coach next year. So there'll be a lot of Dusty talk for sure tomorrow. We'll start with Michigan football. And this week, Michigan's general manager, Sean Magee, was on the Go Blue podcast talking with John Jansen. I listened to it, and I found it interesting. And that's where we start things out, talking about Michigan and the GM role. I believe Magee, when he was asked to tell Jansen what his job description is as general manager, or what the general manager's job is in college football, he said, you go to each school and it's going to be a little bit different answer. And that's right. That's right. You see different GMs, Stanford now, or Cal, and are bringing guys in, but you're helping the head coach manage the roster, and you're putting dollar signs on recruits, and you're helping go through all of the tape of all of the teams and potential transfers that could be coming into Michigan. Meanwhile, you're also thinking about retaining your own guys, and it's massive. You think, wow, that's a massive undertaking. It is. It's you pretty much have to have a read. You pretty much have to have an opinion on every single player, not just an opinion. You have to put a dollar sign and have an opinion on every single player in college football, including your own. And then it's a fluid situation. No, you don't wake up, whatever, if we put 1,000 evaluations out there today, they're not all going to change tomorrow, but they are changing. And especially during the season, you watch some tape, and you talk with your brain trust, and they come back, and there's going to be different guys who have different ideas on different players. It's fascinating, to think about. I find the fascinating part after listening to Magee talk would be scouting and evaluating the high school players. And Michigan probably, they're casting a big net, but they probably have opinions and dollar signs and rankings on every player that's known to man in Michigan, and not just Michigan, but across the country when they're freshmen. And, then that list is changing and moving all the way through to when they're juniors and visits and everything else. But the fascinating part to me is that you got all of these other rankings, rivals.com would be one of them. And then, I don't know, is there 3, 4, maybe even 5 set of rankings. And then Michigan will have their own. And of course, they'll have to have an eye on what everyone's saying, because if they kind of liked a guy, but they had his value way down here, but then they looked at the rankings and there was like, well, this guy's a 5-star. This guy's a top 10 player in the country. Michigan might be like, well, we're probably not going to be able to get that guy. And then vice versa. And didn't really show up at all in the rankings, but they're looking at somebody like, and this is, I don't know if this would be ideal, but it would be, something that you would like, because you'd be able to get a player maybe at a more manageable price. You're looking at him and saying, hey, boy, this guy, no, he was not nobody's radar. And we really like him. So some of those things, and you work through that a lot if you're a fan of recruiting and you're looking at it. But Magee talks a lot about it. I thought one of the the parts, and it just like with the players, it changes certainly year to year how Michigan's going about targeting the transfer portal, how they're doing in recruiting, and it was just last year, the year before, where the idea of Michigan, paying the players or pay to play, they weren't playing that game, and now they are playing that game. This is, drastically different. And even when they were playing the game last year, it took a little bit, because it's, it's not the way they operated. They weren't used to it. So it took them a little bit of time. And I think we could all point to, a fulcrum spot or whatever when, now that they were jumping in, it was getting Underwood. Paying the most, I know this is not what Underwood's dad said, and I know there's, speculation all over the place, but I would think that Underwood, if he's not the most costly player ever before he, plays a college football, he's certainly one of them. Now, maybe, Underwood's camp would want to argue with that, and they don't have to. Not like they have to come out and show the receipts, of their bank account or anything else. They can do whatever they want. And the dad was like, yeah, the money wasn't all that different. Okay, that's great. But I don't know, I didn't really believe that. I believe it's a bigger, number than that. But I don't care really either. My point to all of that is that it's your Michigan is now in the game right now where they can go after any player, and and they can talk money. And what I found interesting, and then I had to sit back and think about it, is Magee was in there and saying, look, if a player comes out and immediately is talking about how much money am I going to get, well, maybe that's not going to be a guy that Michigan's going to go after. And I was thinking about it, if I was a 5-star kid, whatever, if I was a really highly ranked kid and I started talking to schools, I might think like, yeah, I want to cash in and take the absolute most money. That's going to be number one to me. Schools there, NFL playing, that's all, but I want the most money. I might be thinking that, but would I really say that? First thing when Sharon Moore walks in, or the first communication that I have, am I going to be like, what's up? How much? Let's get down to business. Maybe it's in and around way after the conversation, and you start talking about, hey, nice to meet you. Oh, yeah, I'd love to play at Michigan, love the wing helmet. Yeah, I'm interested in school. And yeah, what about the other part? What about the money? And then Sean's like, oh, well, we'll have somebody talk about that with you. And then you're talking about, hey, what are we having for dinner or something else? And like, yeah, how much are guys getting paid? So maybe you figure out that how important the money is. And I'm guessing that it's a balancing act. If you have one of the most highly sought after players in the game and you're not really feeling the vibe, you keep talking about, hey, how was school? And he's like, what would you do with an extra 10 grand or 100 grand? And so you're going to put up with a little bit of that. That's going to be part of it. And so Magee, if you listen to that, it's not like he could come out and say, yeah, sure, we're going to have a sliding scale on this. And yeah, I hear what everybody's saying about transactional and transformational. But of course it was different when we got Underwood, we had to. Those are the things that he couldn't say. But I did pull a piece of the sound because he was about the part of culture and core values and fit, and guys that weren't talking about money first, but that were talking about the Michigan's culture. And here's what Magee said in part to Jansen on the In the Trenches pod.
It's the buy-in that we receive for the authentic relationships, the authentic value, right? The difference in the NFL and college football, I think, comes down to value is not all currency. Mm-hmm. The value of the experience at Michigan, the value of the development, the degree, what you do while you're here, the man you hopefully become when you depart. There's still tremendous value in that. That's not all currency.
I'm going to buy that. You say, are you buying or selling? You say, well, that's just a line from the GM. What's he going to say? Yeah, it's not, totally bottom line about money. And I think there's some truth on both sides of that. But I do think, Michigan still has that to sell. This is the part I'm buying. Michigan has all of this to offer. They do have a tremendous school. They really do, over the years, emphasize the student athlete. They really do emphasize all of the sports, not just football. They really do emphasize what you're doing and not just on the football field, how they're molding you, what your interest, all of those things. Well, why wouldn't they sell it? They have always been that way. They have all of that. If they were lacking in some area, well, they would but they're not. They have that across the board. So I would say, of course, those are the things that they would be emphasizing and saying, well, hey, these are our core values and this is a fit. And guys that lead with talking about money, maybe we're going to, put them on the back burner or whatever else. But that's the way the game is now. It's at least interesting to listen to how a GM operates now. That you're looking at the roster, you're looking at how to manage it, you're talking money, you're talking retaining players, you're looking at every single player that's out there, and you're putting a value on them, and you're doing the same thing with your own players, and those things change and how much they do. But after all of it, here's a couple things that I came up with to tell you about. One is that April the 7th is the settlement date with the NCAA and the courts about revenue sharing. I think it's $20.5 million that all of the schools have, and they can decide each school what to do with it. Now there's Title IX that's saying, hey, you got to split that in half. Maybe they will have to. They'll have a plan, I'm sure, Michigan, that if they do have to give, 10 million and change to men and 10 million and change to women. Well, that's what they'll have to do. And that's what they'll go about doing. If it's 20.5, Michigan may, even if it is, if they're not, they say, well, Title IX, I can't imagine this part happening. I knew there was the legislation that Biden put in, but I don't know. Trump was signing so many different things. Maybe he's already signed it and it doesn't matter. And but a lot of people anticipated that no, that's gonna be changed if it isn't already changed, and maybe it is. But Michigan may look at it like, no, we're going to split this baby in half with how it works. So there's going to be some intrigue, and there's going to be some people that'll be upset. Like if you're just a big Michigan football fan, you don't care about any other sports like, basketball and hockey. Sure, you'd like to see them win or whatever else, any kind of women's sports. It's just, they're just placeholding until you get to football. And all the money is generated by your stance is all the money is generated by football. Therefore, all the money should be going to football. It's a perfectly understandable stance. It does get back to knowing Michigan. Michigan does value all their Olympic sports, women's sports. Means that's a problem. I don't know. I don't know if that's a problem or not. I don't know if they have a mission statement about it, but they're looking at all their sports. And so that'll be interesting. That's the date to think about, April the 7th, when they come up with the settlement about what they're going to do with that $20.5 million, if they'll be able to then directly compensate the players, the school. That's what that's all about. And then how much they're divvying it up, what the courts say, and then what each university says, that will be something that will be, for up for a debate for sure for some people. And I just gave you the arguments there. There has also been some talk about heading up to July 1st before you have the $20.5 million. Maybe schools will just splurge before they try to get to a collective bargaining agreement where it's going to be some kind of cap where they say, look, you can only spend $20 million. And then teams might be like, let's get out in front of that and let's go crazy. I don't know about that, if they're saying it that way, but let's go above the cap while we can. And then there's if there is a cap or if there is a collective bargaining agreement, there's going to be lots of conversation about that and how effective it will be, because the old school, then you could still go back to the black market of paying the players, even though there's a cap. So it's still all there. I believe, if I in the prediction business, why not, that there will be the revenue share, that Michigan will be splitting it in half, regardless of what the courts say with women's sports. And then I also believe that with a collective bargaining agreement, Michigan will then be back to where they were, emphasizing true NIL. And McGee even mentioned true NIL. To Michigan, true NIL is not Michigan reaching in their own pocket and working with the collective and saying, hey, here's $5 million. True NIL is not paying somebody to come in. It's once you get there saying, all right, now look at everything you can have. Michigan's playing the game. They're right there neck and neck with everybody else right now. So you could say you hope it just stays how it is right now, because Michigan has a lot of people with a lot of resources. And they're throwing around a lot of money. So let's just keep that gravy train going. I can understand that argument as well. Now, I threw a lot at you. I admit NIL legislation, gentlemen, that's not as fun as just straight up, talking turkey with who are the top recruits. Screw all that stuff. Fire this guy, pay this guy, win championships. That's it. Also, again, I think understandable if you're out there and you're a sports fan. So I am going to get to a list of players in 2026 that I think Michigan is targeting. Michigan will target. And these guys could all end up going down and being in the maize and blue before all is said and done. Mustafa had listened to the interview, and he said what he got from it is that they meet with targets and determine whether they fit the culture and then proceed with the NIL discussion. Yes, that is what they said. And I tried to talk about that approach, and it's not like, what else are they going to say? But it is something that at some point, they do have to get to, and you don't have to be like, some kind of super clever negotiator if you're a player. if you just have your parents and you know that, hey, you don't just pop up one day and you're a 5-star, then everybody's knocking on your door talking about come to school. You're probably from the time you're 10 years old, even if not sooner, but certainly by the time you're in high school and you're going to have people coming around, you find somebody. Not everybody finds, great representation, but that representative is saying, look, these are the things that we are going to talk about. Let's play this. And it's not a bad thing. Let's play this system the best that we can. And again, Michigan, right now, they have everything. I know when it comes to the transfer portal, which I think they've done well in, they can't get everybody in compared. It's not an even playing field, but now with recruiting players, it is. So, and it really has never been that way before. That's why I'm sitting here, and that's why I was telling everybody what a great day it was on Wednesday, because it had been a day finally in a recruiting cycle that people had talked about, kind of like the Lions going to the Super Bowl. I know it's a sore subject, and maybe I'll get to that later, but people always talked about that, but I've really never believed it. Oh, what if Michigan could just recruit? And with everybody else, what would that be like? Well, we just saw it. We just saw it play out like that. We'll see how much longer that ends up happening. So there we are. Mustafa's still looking at the spring portal. Yeah, there's a spring portal yet to be had. There's spring football, a spring portal to put your finishing touches or to fill a gap or hopefully retain the players and your depth. That was another interesting part of that, Mustafa, that now that you've talked about that, retaining your players. McGee was talking about, so let's say you're a third string or a second string guy on U of M's team, you could probably start at 100 other schools, and there'll be 100 other schools that'll be contacting your agent, whether you're in the transfer portal or not, or your high school coach, and they may be offering you twice the amount of money that Michigan is. And immediate playing time. And that's where McGee said, look, that's where they're leaning on how, what their approach is. They're telling guys, hey, this is your money. This is our plan with you. This is what we see. This is what we have the offer. Some of the guys going to be like, I'm out, but the best they can do. That's an issue with all of the teams across the country. Yeah, you want competitive and you want your depth, but depth is going to be hard because what I just said. And if you weren't listening, back 20 seconds and listen to it. Now, when you do look at recruiting and the transfer portal and all of the ins and outs of what's going on with shaping a football roster, the way that you can get accurate information that is easy to understand and yet complex enough if you want to dive into the numbers and look at everything is by joining up and being a member of the Maize and Blue Review. It is the place to be. It's a lot of fun, packed with information, and you're a Michigan fan and you want to know every single thing that you can about the Maize and Blue. Well, the way to do it is joining up with the Maize and Blue Review. You do that by going to michigan.rivals.com. And I say this as I was just looking at, some of the players. I don't have, this is not a 100-page list of all of the players that have visited, that have been offered, have already visited. These are guys that I'm picking and choosing myself of 26 targets that will make up Michigan's recruiting class for next year. One thing that you should know is that Michigan is sitting on 2 commitments already. They have a wide receiver out of Texas named Jalen Pyle. And Jalen Pyle is a 4-star, and he's 6'1", and he was the first player to verbal in the 26 class. Michigan also has a safety prospect, DB, from Florida named Brody Jennings. He's also a 4-star. These are two that so far have committed for the 26 class. There you go, Mr. Martini. Mr. Martini's a member of the Maize and Blue Review, and you should be too. That is shaken, not stirred from Eminem. How about that? So far, this is my target list, and I am putting number one at the top. If somebody asked me the question, who's the number one player that you want in the entire country for Michigan to bring in next year? This says Corey. I think is maybe his first name is Corey. I thought it was CJ. I'm the one that typed it in. CJ Stadler, the wide receiver from Cass Tech. Now, I don't think I have to explain why would I want CJ Sadler as the most coveted player. One is that he's the top player in the state. You always want the top player in the state when you're Michigan. So that kind of just fits right in. Number two, he's a wide receiver. And having Bryce Underwood and getting him top-notch pass catchers is on a short list of things that you want to do if you're Michigan and you have a guy like Underwood. And Sadler, you say, well, how big of a prospect is it? He's as big as they come, except he's like right on the outside looking in of being a 5-star. But you know how rankings go in the early going, a little bit of bump up, and we're talking about a 5-star, and everybody else is looking at him like that. And I have to admit, I haven't looked across the board, I rarely do, at how everyone else is evaluating him. But my guess is that Michigan, they want to keep guys home. They want to bring in the most talented pass catchers they can for Bryce Underwood. And Sadler's got to be number one. I believe if I went in and snuck into the football office and they had a whiteboard over there that I could look at, I bet Sadler's right at the top. I don't even think what is even the argument? Well, we don't necessarily want guys that, no, there's no argument. They want him. He's on the list. He's number one, and Michigan wants him too. If you don't want the pass catcher, but you you want a bunch of other things too. It's kind of like you've got the great car. Yeah, you want a great stereo and you want great tires. You want everything. So also in the state is an offensive tackle, and he's one of the top 5 players ranked by Rivals.com in the state. He plays over on the west side of Michigan at Portage Northern. His name is Gregory Patrick. Is a 4-star tackle. Michigan definitely wants him. And he's going to be on that same whiteboard that I was talking about. Savion Heiter is a running back on the East Coast from Virginia. And he likes Michigan. I've seen a picture of, it's like the entire Michigan offensive coaching staff standing with him at his high school, I believe. And Heiter likes Michigan. Michigan likes Heiter. He's very highly rated. This is a marriage that is destined to happen. I have Heiter on my list of targets that I think Michigan not only wants, that I think Michigan gets. And I think they'll get the first 3. Now, there's a corner from New Jersey that was just in this past week, highly rated, named Jordan Thomas. I was just looking at his quotes this morning, and I said, why don't I put him on the target list? Just really seeming talking about the profile of core values and fit and culture. Just by reading what he had to say, I'm thinking Jordan Thomas just sounds like a Michigan guy, and he's here. Put him down. And I have him on the list, the corner from New Jersey. Now, I have an asterisk next to the at least today's list of 26 U of M targets. And it's a 5-star quarterback named Brady Smigel. Smigel's out of California. Now, he's interested in Michigan. Michigan's interested in him. But as quarterbacks go, and with Underwood, there's the possibility that Smigel might shy away from Michigan because of Underwood. Now, we've seen such schools as Georgia and obviously Ohio State be able to go back to back with 5 stars. Maybe some other schools are like that, but that's normally not how it goes. But there is interest there, and on both sides. So let's keep Smigel for the time being on this list, but let's just put a little asterisk next to it, thinking that we know how these things go and how they play out. So those are the initial 4, but I put a 5th one on here, and the 5th one is as big as they possibly get. The number 1 player in the country for next year is an offensive lineman out of Missouri. And his name is Jackson Cantwell. Now, Cantwell just put out a list of his 6 schools, a final 6, if you will. And Michigan made the cut for the big tackle out of Missouri, the number 1 player in the country, according to Rivals.com. A 5-star in every sense of the word. Now, you're the number 1 player, you're a 5-star. Maybe Jackson, the first thing he says when he sees Michigan and Grant Newsome is, I must be worth $5 million. No, he's not going to say that. He's going to play it smooth and be like, and he's been in to visit Michigan. I read some of his quotes. He liked his time in Ann Arbor. And just looking at the initial breakdown of the experts, if I had to give a top 3, I would put them in the order that they are listed from left to right on the screen. I think number 1 would be Oregon. For some reason, I didn't get that reason. He has a connection with Eugene. Maybe it's green, like cold hard cash. I don't know. But Michigan has a relationship. And we know where Michigan's at. And Michigan will know, even if they're not talking turkey right off the bat, that Cantwell's coming with a pretty heavy price tag. So, yeah, they should be involved with the top guy. And what his attitude is, how he's talking about it, got to believe that he just knows how that's going to be and what's going to happen there. And then Georgia, just looking at what some of the experts, the national guys are saying, Georgia right there. He's got Missouri, the home state college, got Ohio State on there and the U. Now you can say, well, if he's got the U and Ohio State and Oregon, kidding me, this kid, why is Michigan recruiting him if Michigan's, because he might just not save money right off the bat. He just might say, I want to go where I can win a championship and get a great education and be developed into the best player that I could be. And that's music to Sharon Moore's ears. Go to Michigan. Here, go talk to McGee about the money matters. We won't take a backseat to anybody. That's me talking. I don't know if that's what McGee will say to him. Okay, those are the recruits. Eminem says if Cantwell picks Michigan, they'll drop his star rating. It never fails. Yeah, I think that's something that happens. I've given my own theory. I think in the last show, I gave my theory on how that works. I think even if they're not doing it as a as a site, different sites. I believe they all want to make as much money as they can. And they know that here's my theory. Michigan recruiting fans, they're not going anywhere. They're always going to be there. They're always going to be on these sites. They're always the thirst for recruiting info is never satiated. And they know that they can drop Michigan players because Michigan fans ain't going anywhere. And there's probably another handful of schools. And guess what? The other, 10 schools that are like Michigan, that they've got thousands of fans that subscribe because they just can't get enough of it. They know that too. And I bet they say the exact same thing. Our guys dropping because that's what it's like criticizing the officials. Michigan never gets, every school says that. Every team says that. And I would believe that there's at least 10. Now, those are things that people don't like to hear, but I think it's true. So I said it. So there it is. That's how I think about the recruiting rankings and how sometimes they move things around to keep the interest up. That's how it goes, I believe. Urabi is asking if we really want him. We've got 2 5-star tackles coming. We got Gatch, Sprague, and others. Money should be spent elsewhere. The first part when I was reading it, I was saying, of course they want him. You want the best players that you can possibly get. And it's not an unlimited... I know Ellison has unlimited money, but I'm not sure that he's just given Jolin, here's 100, here's 200 million. Do whatever you want. Get any players that you want. Maybe that's the case. I don't think that is. Maybe if Michigan really needs it, they'll text over Jolin, be like, Jolin, we need it. We need another tackle. Just be like, okay, whatever you want. I don't know how that dynamic is playing out. But it's not now you're thinking like a GM. Urabi? Hey, if you've got 2 bookend tackles and 25, why splurge? Why not spend your cap money, your revenue sharing money, your champion circle money? Why not spend that on a defensive tackle? That's a legitimate. It's a legitimate point. That's a nice point, and one that I hadn't really thought about until just now. Just like with Smigel, the quarterback, why would they want to dump that much money into Smigel when they've got Underwood? Wouldn't that money be better served in going to a top wide receiver? And the answer, as a quick answer, is yes. Yes, it would. Now, it's not as easy as that because you're not assured of getting, but it depends on the interest and of the certain players. But it's a good point on how, if you're managing the team, and especially if they come up with this cap and this revenue sharing. And Michigan they're not just going to have unlimited spending, so to speak. Now, it is that way right now. And maybe before July 1st comes around and there's this revenue sharing and they have this collective bargaining agreement, maybe they're trying to get all of the top guys and spend the money on that because it's going to be different once July 1st hits. There is that idea out there. If they get to July 1st and let's say Michigan has spent $30 million, I don't know, $20 million on their recruiting class. It sounds like a lot. It is a lot, but maybe it's. But then the revenue sharing, Michigan's like, no, we're giving 10.5 to the women's sports. Hey, come on down, rowing team. And we're breaking it down. Football gets 7. Basketball gets 2. I don't know how they're going to do that if they had to say just do it that way. Where then you're going to have to rely on true NIL. That's going back to the old days, like 2-3 years ago, of that is not giving up front money. Yeah, I'm hoping that part doesn't happen. I'm liking the upfront money part. And Michigan can say, yeah, we don't really, they do like it. It's working. And it's really no skin off their back. Let's be honest. It's not like they're going into the athletic department and saying everybody's got to take a 5% cut because we're going after a tackle from Missouri, or we got to put. No, they're going on the outside and they're getting help from people that have money to give. Let's say that people have a lot of money. I don't know. It's kind of the same thing. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'm saying a lot. Anybody that's like talking about this and, assurities and this is the way it's going to play out, I guess I would like to have a discussion with them, like to see what their points are, all those kind of things. Now, let's go to basketball. Michigan with a big game in Bloomington tomorrow. Michigan sitting on 17.5 wins. It is a 1:00 tip against the Hoosiers. And don't forget, we're on the Maize and Blue Review after every Michigan basketball game. So after the Wolverines and Hoosiers tomorrow, we'll go live right on this very channel that you're watching or listening to, and we'll talk about what transpires on the hardwood in Bloomington. Couple of things to know about this game is that Michigan sits with everything that has been said about, wow, the turnovers, they're hard to watch. I don't know if they can, they might be a crash and burn candidate in the NCAA tournament. That could be true. They could also be a team that could be very dangerous that nobody wants to play in the NCAA tournament. I don't know. I'm not ready to say they're going to the Final Four. I'm not ready to say that they're going to be one and done. I'm saying that they've got a lot of possibilities. I will put the ceiling. I don't think that they'll win the championship, but I'll put a ceiling. I think that they could go to the Elite Eight or Final Four, like a ceiling. I'm not predicting that today. But I don't know. I wouldn't predict that. I would predict it to be the other way, but there's a lot of basketball yet to be played. They're only a half game out of first place. And they're getting ready after this Indiana game to play both Purdue and Michigan State at home. I almost feel like I just want to get a taste of just what would it be like they'd be all alone in mid-February in first place in the Big Ten. Well, people will change their opinion. And these are two tournament teams that a lot of people say, well, who's going in the Big Ten? Who are the best teams in the Big Ten? The best teams in the Big Ten are Purdue and Michigan State. We've already seen what happened when Michigan played Purdue once. That was on the road. It was an absolute bloodletting. It was an embarrassment, but you do get a chance to see what you can do when you have them on their home floor. Very interesting to see what happens in that game after this Indiana game. And then, of course, Michigan State. How they'll stack up against Mr. Izzo and company. We'll know a lot after these two games. They're on their own floor, their home floor, and it's kind of the same old song and dance, and they end up with the turnovers, and they end up on the short side. Doesn't mean the season's over or anything, but, any kind of we're going to make a run talk, I think you have to table it for at least a little bit. But you go out there, and obviously you win both. You blow the lid off of being able to talk about crazy, go ahead. Anything that you can say. Michigan is being disrespected at 24. Yeah, I don't care too much about that because the respect is going to come in short order. Short order being they've got these teams that they're about ready to rise in those rankings. I thought a couple weeks ago, the computers liked Michigan a lot more than the voters. But let's get to the point where we're going to be real honest about everything. After this Indiana game, it's Purdue at Ohio State, who I watched last night, come from behind and beat Maryland when they looked like they were dead in the water the whole game. And then it's Michigan State, IU, Purdue at Ohio State, and Michigan State. So if they feel like they're disrespected, they can go show everyone what that's all about coming up over the next 2 weeks. So if they feel this way, fine. They can go over and show everybody what it's all about. That's what I'm looking at. That's what I see. Oh, one other thing. Will the Hoosiers be a tough out because their head coach is out at the end of the year? That news just broke yesterday by multiple news outlets, ESPN being one of them, saying that Mike Woodson is not expected to return to Indiana next season. So will there be a win-1 for Woody tomorrow and a backdrop, for the coach who played for Bob Knight, played on a championship team? You bring back someone like Woody. I always liked Mike Woodson. He was an assistant on the Pistons going to work championship team of 2004, where he coached under Larry Brown. How about that? Played for Bob Knight, coached under Larry Brown. I mean, he had nice credentials going back home, and it hasn't worked out. Hasn't been able to recruit like they thought. But I just mentioned ESPN, and they had a list of the kind of coaches that they're going after. This was a hell of a list. Brad Stevens is a GM, right, of the Celtics, but was at Butler. Everybody would want him. Having him come back would be the grand. So it would be like Jim Harbaugh, hiring Jim Harbaugh out of the pros. But hey, it's time to dream, right? We're putting that down. Scott Drew is at Baylor. He just turned everybody down this year. Pearl could always be had, but he's been at Auburn for a while now. He's got the #1 team. Is he ready to? Put him on the list. Otzlenberger was somebody that Michigan wanted, and then he had that gigantic buyout, and then he signed a new deal. So, yeah, I'm sure they want TJ Otzlenberger. Who wouldn't? Chris Beard is an IU guy. Some of his off-the-floor stuff notwithstanding, he'd be a guy that Hoosier fans would like. I got Dusty May's name on there. I mean, we know the connections with May. Nate Oates, his name's always on there. Big buyout. Billy Donovan, who's in the pro. I mean, these are I don't think they're getting any of those guys, by the way. But that's the list that ESPN had out there. And the initial list you put out, hey, put your wish list out. Don't worry about the buyout. Just put the biggest names and who you would really want. And then we'll see who the Hoosiers Ellisons are. Maybe the Hoosiers have somebody that's sitting out there that's a billionaire being like, I'll pay $20 million for a buyout. Then I'll pay this guy $8 million a year. Maybe that's what they're ready to do with Brad Stevens. They've got their Joe Lynn on the basketball side. Who knows? But that's it. So that's going to do it. We'll talk with you tomorrow after the Michigan basketball game. We'll see you over on the Maize and Blue review on the Den, the posting board, all day, all night, leading up to the game tomorrow. And so we'll see you then. Super Bowl Sunday. Yeah, it sucks that the Lions aren't there, but try to enjoy yourself anyways and enjoy the basketball game tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk with you soon. Goodbye.